I'm Nick Forster. You're listening to eTown, the Sam Grissman Project. It's going to be back to play some more music later on. And coming up, the duo Viv and Riley are here from North Carolina. They're going to play some songs from their latest record. Before we bring them out, most of you know that we try every week to share some good news, some stories about something that is working, helping, making things better in some ways. And this week is no exception. Our next guest found a way to turn her passion for movement and dance into a pathway for healing for women in prison. And from what I understand, the population of women in prison today is roughly 6 times what it was in 1980. And about a quarter of them are in prison for drug charges. It's a bigger topic, obviously, than we can cover today, but it's worth noting that we do imprison more people per capita than almost every other country on earth, with the exception of El Salvador and Turkmenistan and Cuba. But more on that another time. Our next guest is really bringing something powerful to those women in prison through the group she founded. It's called Dance to Be Free. It's a beautiful pathway to healing, and it's growing, and it's serving more people all the time since she founded it 9 years ago. So please welcome to eTown, Lucy Wallace.
Thank you for having me.
So welcome, Lucy. Good to see you. Nice to have you here.
Oh my gosh, this is incredible what you're doing. You and Helen. Is this amazing? This is such a beautiful offering. And
Well, listen, I want to learn about this project of yours. So 9 years ago, this started. I'm always curious about how these things start. You know, obviously, it's a good idea, and that would be nice, or that might help, or whatever, but starting is so tough. So how did you start?
Right. As you would know, having a nonprofit is so challenging. So it came out of thin air. I had a dance studio. I had a background in psychology. I owned Alchemy of Movement, for some people might know, and people would check into class and say, "This place keeps me out of jail." And I was just like, it's a very interesting comment. And then
no one's ever said that to me, by the way.
Yeah, eTown keeps you out of jail. So I knew what my classes were doing were therapeutic. I have a very cathartic style. I don't just dance to exercise, I dance to heal. And so my ex-boyfriend at the time said, "Should you make the studio into a nonprofit?" And I was like, I know nothing about running a nonprofit. And then I ran the idea by a woman, and she was like, "What if you dance with women in prison?" That was how it came about. It's like the most small, ordinary moment that could have just flown by and never become anything. And I just thought that is the most brilliant idea I've ever heard of. And I'm always a little embarrassed to say I was watching Orange is the New Black, but I saw that they had yoga. And I feel like art imitating life, life imitating, they had the women in a gym doing yoga. So I realized they have space. Like, I feel like Genji Cohen put women in prison on the map in a way. I always thought of men in prison. But then that show revealed like women are growing 700% increase since 1980. And it's all the underlying thrust of the whole program is to help people heal from trauma. So trauma is stored in the body, and you can't talk your way out of it. Mm-hmm. It's visceral, it's primal, it's nonverbal. And so to dance to music, so music is half the program, is the most easy avenue for healing. I don't have to talk, I don't have to convince, I don't have to share a message even.
Where did you start? Did you find one prison and just say, I'm going to show up with a boombox and dance around?
Imagine. So I didn't even know there's a prison in Aurora called Denver Women's Correctional Facility. I finally got a hold of the captain, and the captain said, become a volunteer. And then I had to go through a training and get a tour. That was probably the most intimidating thing I've ever done, because I had no idea. I was like, do I smile? Do I make eye contact? Do I cross my arms? I was so awkward. And then when I went to Denver Women's, it was like a high school. Everyone's just wearing the same clothing. And it was clean, people were friendly. And then I expanded to Pueblo, and we started doing teacher training. So we teach the women how to teach each other. So we're not just dancing in a bubble. And so it's peer-led.
And tell us a little bit about some of these women that you got to meet through this program. So, as I mentioned, about a quarter of them are in on drug charges, but there's a lot of trauma, and there's a lot of trauma since childhood. And as you say, dance is a way for them to both connect with their bodies in a new way and also release some trauma.
Right.
But you must have heard some stories as you started this program. So tell us about some of the women you encountered.
I mean, just horrific childhood stories beyond comprehension over and over. In 9 years, it just gets worse, actually, where I think I've heard the worst story, the most violent. Women arrive in prison already survivors of sexual abuse, and like 94%. So they're arriving into a traumatizing environment with all of that previous trauma. And then they are in an environment that is like and boxed, and you walk in a line. So to actually move and get weird, they are so responsive. And so they share the most beautiful insights. And they're like, in 2 days, they'll even be like enlightened things coming out of them, like poetry. And the big part of the program is also writing. So that's another part. But
So there is a website. Is it called dancetobefree.org?
yeah, just like it sounds.
Dancetobefree.org. And on that website, there's some videos and that includes some testimonials from people who've actually gone through the program and become instructors.
Yeah.
And dealt with the fact that this was more effective than years of therapy in some people's lives. So it must be very empowering for you to say that this is a simple idea, and now you're operating in more than just 2 prisons, right?
It's been 21 prisons in 12 states. And yeah. And I often joke that I don't know what's harder, having a nonprofit or working within the Department of Corrections. The restrictions of a 501c3 are like a prison. And then the Department of Corrections, it's almost a miracle we can pull it off at all, because it's like filled with just like, no, no, no. So I've been going to Mississippi for 7 years, and I was getting just this close to getting the New York Times dance critic to come with me. And Mississippi said, nope, you can't come back. And it's just so devastating. And
Was that Parchman Farm, or where was that?
Yeah, so I went to Parchman, which, Google it.
It's famous in song. Yeah.
Such a huge history of the blues and just slavery and culture. It's just so rich in Mississippi. And I was so sad to be told, no, you can't come back. And he said, the director of the DOC said, we have to consider the victims. And so tragic. And I'm willing to smear his name because I can't go back. So now I don't have to whitewash my stories. For 9 years, I have to be like, well, it's really hard. I'm like, no. This is political, and it's extremely challenging. And so one day we'll go back. But we go to Arkansas, we go to Hawaii, we go to Idaho, Florida, Nebraska, all over the country.
Yeah, that's great. And so the program is growing, you're reaching more women, and I understand you're also starting a program of dancing with men who are incarcerated as well.
Yes, so the men were only in Mississippi. And so the first men we worked with were all veterans, so you can imagine their trauma. And it was the best training I ever had. Men are actually easier to work with. Women are complex.
Not as good dancers, though, probably.
I was blown away. It was so sweet. They were they respected me. Like, the women will just chit chat while I'm talking, and I get so angry. Like, there are even people here tonight talking while you were interviewing Sam, and I was like, like that drives me crazy. And so to have men just like, they're simple. And so basically,
Simple. Okay.
really, well, women, we are a little, So I wanted to work more with men because I was like, this is kind of easier to choreograph with men. I was like, this is so much less drama. So it's beautiful. And I hope to work with more men, actually.
Well, and is there, other than the Department of Corrections and the limitations that are sort of inherent in the system, are there any reasons? Because you're training, as I understand it, inmates to become instructors and to help facilitate, because you obviously can't go everywhere all the time. And I suspect this is such a cathartic experience for those inmates that they'd like to have it happen more often.
Yeah.
Like, could it happen once or twice a week even?
Yeah. If there's staff support and a state like Colorado where there's money to put into prisons, they're dancing every week for 9 years.
Wow.
So they're like self-sustaining, they're off and running. Nebraska's done really well too, but a place like Mississippi where it's super poor and there's no money, it's the blackest, poorest, most incarcerated state in the country. There's no resource, there's no infrastructure. So again, to be told I can't go back, I'm just like, you poked a bear and I'm coming back.
But all right. Well, listen, it's great that you're able to not only have the ability to share this experience that's so powerful with these inmates, and it is aptly named because I'm sure during the time they're dancing, they do feel free. They do feel not like they're incarcerated or not like they're traumatized.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that you're training inmates to actually help lead these classes and have this thing grow. I wish you a lot of luck. 9 states is already impressive.
12.
Oh, 12 states. Yeah, 12
Well.
states is impressive. Yeah, well, keep it up, Lucy,
Thank
and
you so much for
congratulations.
having
yeah.
me.
Thanks for sharing your story. That's dancetobefree.org. If you want to learn more, dancetobefree.org.